Hello.
Our story begins inside the chambers of the Jedi High Council. Ahsoka Tano, 2-year student of Anakin Skywalker, was standing alone. She and her master had just returned from a campaign. Anakin was off doing who knows what with whoever, totally not Padme, and Ahsoka was here, making a case to the council. The Jedi inside the chambers were a little confused by the Padawan's request, but there was some legitimacy to her request. Ahsoka had been in the archives with her friend Barriss. Her friend had mentioned something about a weapons master, and Ahsoka had never heard of it before. Barriss explained what they were, which inspired Ahsoka to come up here to the council. She requested time, and she was accepted, as the final entry of the day. The council for the most part was present on Coruscant. They were seated in their seats, only a few of them were not here, including Shaak Ti, who was on Kamino, and Saesee Tiin, who was joining from the front lines, obviously not in combat at the moment. Ahsoka addressed the council respectively, and she explained that she understood that this was not her place to suggest promotions or even decisions typically granted by the High Council, but she was curious if they would be open to promoting Anakin to Weapons Master. The members looked to each other, very confusedly. Most of them hadn't ever had a Weapons Master. In the years leading up to the High Republic, there wasn't much of a need for these type of Jedi, because the Order became peaceful. There were 1 or 2 Weapons Masters during the High Republic, but for the most part, they had died out, and no one had been inspired enough to bring them up until now. Yoda asked Ahsoka why she wanted to give Skywalker such a promotion. Ahsoka kind of hesitated, but she explained that Barriss had been learning about former rankings inside the Jedi Temple, and this was one of them that came up. Yoda nodded his head, and turned the mace. Yoda was mostly curious if Anakin had put Ahsoka up to the task of testing the Council, but she wasn't lying. Obi-Wan and Plo knew that for a fact. Ahsoka explained that she had been serving with Anakin throughout this war. She had seen him fend off Count Dooku on numerous occasions, and she had seen him defeat Asajj Ventress on others. In an era of combat, one that she and the Council disagreed with, perhaps it was time for members of their order to be given rankings that could assist them with ending the war. Mace looked to Yoda and thought, pressing his hand to his chin. It wasn't a terrible idea. There were many fierce warriors within the Jedi Order, Master Krell, the Tipli and Tiplar sisters, and of course Anakin, being great contenders. The biggest difference between Battle Master and Weapons Master was simple, and what this promotion would do for Anakin wouldn't change that much. The Council had come to a conclusion that Ahsoka would become a knight around the age of 17 or 18, like Mace, Vernestra, and like her own master. That was where she would probably land. The Council at this point had every reason to trust her judgment, because she had proven herself extensively up until this point. See, the Battle Master of the Order, Cin Drallig, was the finest instructor of the blade, whereas the title of Weapons Master belonged to the most capable fighters within the Order. So Mace suggested that if she believed Anakin was up to the task, then he would have to complete 3 sets of spars. If he could prove himself in each of these engagements, then the Council would consider it. But he was not to know about these 3 spars, more so that he was being considered for the role. Ahsoka smiled and bowed before abandoning the council. Each of the members turned their heads and began discussing this decision. It wasn't a terrible idea. A weapons master would be able to learn more about some of the exotic forms used by Jedi in the past. Someone like Anakin could thrive off that. Yoda agreed with Windu's statement. However, there was a slight concern. Anakin's anger should come into consideration when looking at this role for him. Young Skywalker was a gifted Jedi, but powerful beyond his years and arrogant he could become with such a role. They needed to take great patience and care with proceeding in this direction. Mace agreed, which is why they were to set up 3 different spars for Anakin to complete. The purpose was not victory, and the Council knew that. The purpose of these spars were to test his strength in combat, and understand his mindset, that being, if he could be trusted with the role. He, after all, would be the first Jedi in centuries to hold this title. Later on that evening, after a date with Padme, Anakin would return to be greeted by Cin Drallig. Assuming he was in trouble, he was prepared to deny, but that wasn't the case. Cin Drallig brought Anakin to a training room and told him to ready himself. Now he was confused. Anakin asked what was happening, and Cin Drallig confusedly explained what he had been told by the Council, alluding to the whole Weapons Master thing, leaving Anakin even more confused. What did he mean by Weapons Master? Anakin hadn't even heard of that role before either. Obviously, he was a bit perturbed, because Ahsoka somehow managed to not elaborate on this. She just got distracted in all fairness to her, but Anakin got ready. He shedded his Jedi robe and prepared his weapon. He and Cin Drallig got into an elongated combat. Their weapons collided across the chambers of the training facility. On the bleachers, hidden in darkness, were the present council members. Yoda and Mace sat together, watching and listening as Anakin's weapon clashed against Master Cin Drallig's. Truthfully, it had been a long time since Anakin and he sparred, and he initially was caught off guard. Anakin was fast, precise, and strong, but he lacked the true mastery, which perhaps was the point of this exercise. Cin Drallig started out weak. He struggled due to the surprise in Anakin's adult power, but he rallied towards the end, using his own mastery and understanding of every lightsaber form to beat Anakin back, before trapping him in a defensive maneuver that forced Skywalker's blade from his hand. Cin Drallig bowed and thanked Anakin for his time, getting up and leaving the room. Anakin scratched his head and bent over, grabbing his lightsaber and placing it on his belt, as he then turned over and turned a hologram on so he could watch the fight over. The counselor sat in silence, watching the obsessiveness of Anakin wash over him. He had done this with a hologram of Darth Maul as a youngling, and yet again, he was locked into his previous spar with Cin Drallig. He enlarged the hologram and fought against it, using all of his moves and then countering where he faltered. He messed up once, twice, and thrice, before getting the duel under control and finding his balance. He locked in and did it again and again and again until he continued finding victory. Anakin's commitment to his lightsaber combat was honestly admirable. Jedi do not choose attack, nor do they choose violence, but in a time of war, one must be prepared. Skywalker was, and he was instructing his student to be as well. After several minutes of training alone, Anakin turned the hologram off and prepared to leave, when Master Windu emerged from the shadow of the room, startling Anakin. The Jedi Knight asked how long he was here, and Mace explained that he wasn't, he just walked in, noticing that he was sparring alone. Master Windu unlatched his lightsaber and asked if he may spar. Anakin had by this point disregarded what Cin Drallig had said before in their previous spar, but he did find this a little weird. If Mace was challenging, he would accept. Their weapons ignited, and the Master of the Order waited not a second. He swung forward aggressively, as Dooku would. His blade was parried and blocked, but the immense speed of the Jedi Master was daunting for Skywalker. Mace wasn't here to win, he was here to test. Their blades were rapid, exchanging blows every few milliseconds. Skywalker, without his cloak, leapt out of the way, but Mace moved as if he wasn't wearing his long robes. The Jedi Master pressed forward, giving Anakin his room to maneuver, but never giving him the chance to get close. Anakin spun his lightsaber behind his back, which Mace reverse gripped his lightsaber mid-defense and cut directly into the behind-the-back swing, throwing the blade from Anakin's hand. Mace pulled the weapon with the Force and ignited it, bringing it around and stopping it outside of Anakin's back. Their several-minute duel had sweat dripping off of Anakin's face. The Master of the Order nodded his head at Anakin with a smile, flipping the Jedi Knight's blade in his own hand before pressing it back to Anakin and patting him on the shoulder, telling him that he had done well, before vanishing again. Skywalker, again, despite being worn out, got back to it. After mastering his duel against Cin Drallig, he started on his fight against Mace, repeating each of his steps and his failures. What Anakin had grown accustomed to was being able to use his aggression, but Mace just exposed it. While every duel was different, Skywalker needed to learn that Dooku would be aggressive, and he needed to master his own form of defense to handle Dooku's offense. Anakin used his behind-the-back swing over and again, testing himself to guide his blade more efficiently, forcing himself to be faster and more precise. But like with all things, training can only go so far for so long. Mace's rhythm was perfect. What Cin Drallig had done was basic, mastery attack. One where Cin Drallig took his time and played the long game. Mace went in with power and strength, forcing Anakin to be on his back foot. At Dooku's age, he likely wouldn't be able to contribute to a fight in the same way that Mace had. Obviously, it was training, a test, but there was also Dooku's other disadvantage, which was the fact that he wasn't allowed to kill Anakin, which the Jedi didn't know about, so he had to be extra careful during fights against young Skywalker. Mace didn't have to worry about that here. They were only using their training sabers, so they would only burn you, not hurt, wound, or kill you. As Anakin was finishing up his training against the hologram of Mace Windu, which took about a half hour, he prepared to leave. Just like Mace did, Yoda appeared out of the shadows. By this point, Anakin was starting to get a little frustrated. He was tired. He'd been out all day, he was ready for a shower and the big nap. In the next couple days, he'd be going off to the war again, and all this extra training was not just confusing, but kind of annoying. Yoda asked Anakin what he was doing, and it was explained. Yoda then asked to spar with him. A deep breath fled Anakin's lungs as he readied himself again, rolling his arms, loosening up already tired muscles as they began. Where Cin Drallig was mastery and Mace Windu was attack, Yoda was defense. Their duel started slow. Yoda paced around, giving Anakin the incentive to take the first strike. He moved in, and slowly the duel escalated into a fierce sparring. Anakin ducked and spun, avoiding all of Yoda's counters, as the Jedi Master leapt over him. Skywalker jumped out of the way and blocked swings that would make him a 3-time loser on the day. He got to his feet and blocked every strike he could, before pressing his own offensive. Yoda was a hard target to hit, but he did this intentionally. As Dooku's instructor, he knew all of his weaknesses and played on Dooku's struggles against Anakin, which ironically worked a little too well. Yoda dragged the spar out until ending it with one solid power strike to knock Anakin off his feet again. Anakin looked up to see the emerald lightsaber hovering in front of his face. Yoda told him he did well, thanking him for the spar. While Anakin didn't really want to do it, his competitive nature couldn't stop him. He turned the hologram on and got back to work. This told the counselors everything they needed to know about him. Sure, it would have been cool if he had won a fight, but he wasn't going to. Each master was prepared for the spar, aside from Cin Drallig, who, on his own accordance, went a little too soft. With their data collected, the council watched in silence. Before Anakin turned the hologram on, he watched Yoda leave the room and got up and kicked his lightsaber. It slammed into the wall and bursted open. His head tilted back and walked over. He picked up the lightsaber, mumbling to himself. He was right to be frustrated. As one of the most talented duelists in the Order, he just got showed up 3 times in a row. That didn't feel good. But as he put his sparring blade back together, his anger vanished and a smile grew on his face. He loved fixing things. He wiped his brow and got back to work, training with the hologram of Yoda. The following day, he'd be called to the Jedi Council chambers, where they would ask him if he knew why they were testing him yesterday. And he responded with some snark, suggesting that they were toying with his head. Yoda smiled and shook his head, telling him the truth. Mace then asked if Ahsoka had said anything to him about it. Anakin thought quietly and shook his head, asking if she was supposed to tell him something. Mace nodded his head. This got a chuckle from the council. Like master, like apprentice. They really were perfect for each other. Regardless, Mace posed a question. Would he like to become weapons master of the Order? He asked about it, and they told him. He asked why they were considering him for this. Yoda said that Mace planned everything. Anakin was never meant to win those 3 spars. That wasn't the point of the exercise either. They all knew Anakin had the potential to be the best of them. That wasn't in question. What was in question was how he would handle being confronted multiple times a day. Whenever the war came to an end, they would return to normal life, and he would be addressed as a Jedi Master, one that was presiding over the weapons side of Jedi life. It did not matter if Ahsoka was a knight by that time or not. The council believed she would be, but that didn't matter for the sake of argument. Skywalker would have the rank itself, as he had earned it through a different route. Anakin wanted to understand more about the test, so Yoda continued telling him. In the test, he confronted 3 masters. While they weren't the challenge per se, they were understanding Anakin's commitment to the way of the blade. Not every Jedi would do that. Not every Jedi would have accepted 3 spars against 3 masters. Maybe that was an ignorance thing, maybe it was a yes man thing, maybe it was a thrill of a challenge. Didn't matter. The council believed it was the latter of the options, and yes, thrill of challenge wasn't quite the Jedi way, it was Anakin's way, and that was something that did come with the weapons master position in the past. Yoda could recall quite a few Jedi who had held such rank and acted similarly to Skywalker. Point being, he was interrupted from his daily life 3 times in a row, back to back to back, and he did not get angry at the individual doing it. Sure, he wasn't going to get mad at Yoda, but the test was present. He took a deep breath, he didn't admit verbally that he was frustrated, and he did as he was asked. A youngling or Padawan wouldn't know that, but there was work that needed to be done. The council understood this, and Anakin did too. The question then remained, would he want to become a Jedi weapons master? Anakin looked to his side, where his lightsaber sat idly, and a smile formed on his face, and he nodded. Mace would stand up and commence the mastering ceremony so that Anakin could have the official rank and be congratulated in front of all the council members, instead of trying to do this another time. Anakin was very prideful, but there were some other things that would need to be discussed. Mace Windu would be handling that. The 2 of them left the chambers as the council went right back into their regular discussions. Mace told Anakin that he was overjoyed to hand over such an honor to Skywalker. The Council had their faith in him, and he had proven them right for having it, but he couldn't let this get to his head. Anakin must understand that as a weapons master, he would be a teacher for all. Anyone who wanted his advice must receive it. However, the minds of the Council understood that Anakin did not master all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, so with time, would his role be disclosed to Jedi around him. For the time being, only Masters would know about his promotion. Anakin asked why, and it was because Skywalker would learn on the job. He would spar with Masters throughout the duration of the war. He would continue training Ahsoka until she became a knight, and he would serve as one of the fiercest warriors inside the Order until peace returned. When that day came, the counselors believed that Anakin would have not just a basic understanding of all 7 forms, but be more than capable of teaching it, as well as a basic understanding of other lightsaber techniques and blades, such as pikes, double sabers, quarterstaffs, whips, and Sinai staves. Anakin was a little worried, honestly, so he asked Mace why they were doing this, and he stopped, turning to Anakin and nodding his head. He then spoke, telling Anakin that it was because they believed he was capable. Before Anakin left the temple for another campaign, he and Mace would have another spar. This time, their spar would be more of a dance, a conversation. Instead of giving Anakin a hard time as he had before, he was actually sparring as one should. The test was a test for a reason, a test of Anakin's patience. This, though, was a genuine experience. Mace corrected some of Anakin's stances and walked him through a couple counters. Mace and Dooku were friends after all, and they had sparred on many occasions. So Mace taught Anakin how to twist Dooku around and throw him forward. In combat, it wouldn't be as innocent, but Anakin enjoyed the quality time with the Master of the Order. On the front lines, Anakin's knowledge would continue to expand. He would be delighted to learn something new every day. And something else truly special came from this: his relationship with the High Council in its entirety. As the weapons master, he felt more confident reaching out to them for help, which he would have always gotten if he had reached out earlier. But the main thing is, there was a foundational trust that now existed between himself and the Council, mostly for Anakin, in all honesty. They had their reasons for not trusting him in the past, off the bat, which were valid, but their lack of trust for him did not mean that they wouldn't have helped him if he had reached out. He just never reached out to begin with. Now that Skywalker felt like he could trust the people in the Council, he was actively talking to those who weren't on battlefronts. This mostly included Shakti and Yoda. Anakin loved their conversations, and he often bit hard on the chance to speak to people. This didn't disrupt anything for the other 2 masters or anyone else, but they were genuinely shocked by how much Anakin embraced his new position. They believed Ahsoka was right to see him as a weapons master, but never did they think he would bite so hard onto the role. This trust that was formed between Anakin and the Council led to them disclosing information to him. Obi-Wan was going to fake his death, and he suggests that the Council withhold that information from Anakin. Why? The Council itself didn't even know, but they trusted Obi-Wan because he knew Anakin the best, right? No, it was a terrible idea. The Council, especially after getting connected to Anakin, shot that idea down. First, Mace did, then Shakti, and then the rest of the Council rallied behind it. This wasn't even an attachment thing, it was just a stupid idea. Should have sent Obi-Wan to time out for even thinking he was intelligent. Because Anakin knew everything would go smoothly without interruption. Skywalker's reaction would sell Obi-Wan's death, and he would be able to accomplish his mission without Anakin trying to murder him for murdering his teacher. Brilliant idea. On Naboo, that's where the real change would happen. Anakin was walking with Palpatine, talking about the brilliance of the successful plan, explaining that while he wasn't involved, it was executed flawlessly. But there was unease. Where was this frustration coming from? Palpatine could feel that Anakin was annoyed or angered, but if not with the Jedi, then who? He probed, and Anakin admitted that he was really angry with something. And before Palpatine could get his answer, they ran into Dooku. Skywalker ignited his lightsaber and stepped forward. Dooku was already ready, bringing his lightsaber above his head. It had been months since becoming weapons master, and yet Dooku was here to deface the imagery of that status. Anakin pushed Palpatine behind him and engaged. Dooku was about to make a fool out of Anakin. As he pressed forward, he drove his lightsaber at Skywalker, spinning ahead. But Anakin defended himself. Thanks to his spars with Mace and his time learning from other conversations he had, he defended himself, covering weaknesses that Dooku was here to exploit. Palpatine watched with glee as the Sith and Jedi clashed in the middle. Dooku shoved Anakin back and launched silverware from the table at Anakin, getting a fork stuck in his metal wrist. Anakin's brow firmed and he threw himself in. Palpatine could feel the anger rising from Anakin. But what he didn't catch was Anakin not using it. All of the advanced lessons he had learned in the last several months went into effect immediately. Anakin elbowed Dooku and he fell over. Before being killed, 2 Magna Guards attacked Anakin. Skywalker stopped one of their strikes by palming their fist with his metal hand and shoving it back. Anakin kicked Dooku into the table as he was getting up, and cut down the remaining Magna Guard. The Countess Sereno tried to get to Palpatine's side, but the Sith in Sidious was interested to see where this went. He smiled and watched Anakin drive his weapon into Dooku's defense. The Sith apprentice ducked a swing and dove forward, but Anakin was ready. He had practiced this with Mace. He swung his left hand under his arm and grabbed Dooku's wrist, squeezing it and dragging his right hand down and slashing Dooku's face, and watching him drop to the ground. Dooku stumbled back and Anakin swung his elbow into Dooku's jaw, before driving his lightsaber forward and extinguishing Dooku's life immediately. Palpatine was truthfully shocked. He didn't even think that Dooku would be killed so flawlessly by Anakin, but that was his fault. He had instructed Tyrannus to go easy on his future pupil, and now he was dead. Anakin contacted Windu and Kenobi, who got there almost immediately, and looked at Skywalker's victory. It did sadden Mace, but he believed that this was what was meant to happen. He believed that if Anakin was meant to bring balance to the Force, then his own error on Geonosis by not killing Dooku would be accomplished by Anakin. It was true, and here he could see that Anakin was triumphant. This meant that the war was only one step closer to coming to a resolve. The Chancellor was taken to a safe location as the Jedi swarmed the area, preparing to bring Dooku back to Coruscant. The death of the leader of the Confederacy was a win for the entire galaxy, but it wasn't what ended the war. Grievous was now in charge, which left Palpatine in a difficult predicament. The Senate gifted him extra emergency powers to end the war, and so, as a result, Palpatine decided it'd be a good idea for the Republic to start spreading out. He wanted Jedi Council members on the front lines, ending the war on the behalf of the Republic. General Grievous was given coordinates to go to, and Mace Windu was sent there too. Palpatine didn't care which died. In the meantime, Skywalker was kept close to Coruscant, and the Chancellor prepared for the destruction of the Republic and the end of the Clone Wars. It would be a bit early, but he could live with that. Nothing wrong there. Palpatine, after watching Anakin kill Dooku in anger, believed that he was ready to go. The only issue is, Anakin never killed Dooku in anger. He killed him with anger within him, but in his new training, especially with Mace, those vengeful and even rage-filled emotions never surfaced. They bubbled, and then they slowly popped, fizzling out within him without actually affecting his duel. Palpatine misread the entire situation, and that would cost him an extra ally when he executed Order 66. The execution didn't come immediately after Naboo. Around a month and a half to 2 months after Dooku died is when it came. It gave him all the time necessary to gain his power, prepare his counter, get the Separatists into losing positions, and dispatch the Jedi Council. It was the perfect counter, and it would transform him from Supreme Chancellor into Emperor of the Galactic Republic. With Ahsoka and Anakin on Coruscant, they would be awoken by a surge of pain in the Force. That pain was the death and confusion of a multitude of Jedi across the stars. Counselors, Masters, Knights, and Padawans were killed unexpectedly. Inside the temple, Anakin and Ahsoka met up in the halls, as they ran towards the blaster fire. Both of them were expecting battle droids, but when they came around, it was members of the 501st and Coruscant Guard. Even more than that, it was the middle of the night. The Jedi rose from their sleep to fend off their home. Anakin cut off a grouping of his own men, using the Force to throw them in the walls and cutting their blasters open. Ahsoka did the same, using both the Force and her hands to beat the clones into a state of being unconscious. As they were running along, they came across a group of younglings. Anakin told Ahsoka to go. He would take care of these children. They asked Master Skywalker what they were going to do, and he told them to stay close to him. He turned them around and ran them down a hall. As they did, they were cut off by more clones. They had been instructed not to kill Anakin, but he was helping the Jedi, so, to the clones, he was another target. Their blasters opened fire at him, and Anakin stood in front of the younglings. His weapon spun with electrifying speed as he defended himself and the younglings behind him. He threw his hand forward, launching his men from their feet, as he got the younglings to the archives where everyone was being rounded up at. He turned back around and ran back towards the fray. Ahsoka wasn't having a difficult time, and the other 2 counselors on planet, Kit Fisto and Agon Kolar, were helping Battlemaster Cin Drallig hold the lines. With these Jedi present, the temple defenses started to stiffen. Temple guards came to the aid of the Jedi Masters defending the front entrance of their palace. Ahsoka rallied with the Temple Guard unit, and within the coming hours, the battle died down and the clones fell into a retreat. Anakin feared that there was some sort of separatist trick here, so he suggested they go and save the Chancellor and bring him to the temple. It was agreed upon. Fisto, Ahsoka, Kolar, Anakin, and 4 temple guards joined them as they went to find the Chancellor and save him from whatever carnage this was. With the temple completely locked down, for now, this was their only time to make a move before it got worse. They departed the temple and quickly arrived at Palpatine's residence. Outside of it, there were a number of LAAT dropships, and the men of the 501st and Coruscant Guard standing watch. They noticed the Jedi ship coming down and reacted, but they couldn't start firing before it vanished behind some buildings. This allowed the Jedi to believe they went unnoticed. The group of Jedi ran into the mansion and searched for the Chancellor. They ran through the corridors, and as they did, they found him. He was wearing his night robes, and he whispered to the Jedi, asking them what was happening. Anakin grabbed his upper arm and told him to come with them. Palpatine didn't understand. Anakin was supposed to be filled with rage. Where was that rage? Had he jumped the gun? It didn't seem likely in his mind. As a group of Jedi were running through the halls with Palpatine, a group of clones blocked off their escape, calling out for Lord Sidious. The voice was so familiar, it wasn't just any regular clone, it was Captain Rex, and he was trying to see if the man who had executed Order 66 was alright. The Jedi all stopped in their tracks. Agan and Kit knew what this meant, and their lightsabers ignited. Upon reaction, the temple guards did the same. Ahsoka and Anakin looked to each other as Sidious told them that they shouldn't have come here. It was a terrible mistake on their part. Anakin pushed Ahsoka behind him as he raised his lightsaber. Sidious leapt at the Jedi, swinging viciously, using a Sith howl to disorient them. Kolar and Fisto blocked first, ducking out of the way. Palpatine never had a chance to put a riddle into their minds, so they were clear and prepared to defend themselves from this assault. The temple guards pressed in, with Ahsoka and Anakin joining as well. Their lightsabers were quick, but Sidious was remarkable. He bashed his blade at the Jedi, who ducked and parried where they could. None of the Jedi, aside from Agan and Kit, had time working together. The 2 masterful council members defended themselves quickly, their weapons defending from Palpatine's radical swings. Anakin got into the fray, pushing in, using what little he had learned from Mace, with the temple guards following his lead. Palpatine was remarkable. 2 lightsabers moved between his hands, blocking and avoiding. Sidious was able to throw a Jedi back, block another, attack the last, before coming back around to swing and parry one more. He was quick, moving between his opponents, striking them, and attempting to get his kills. With 2 council members present, it was nearly impossible. He had the jump on them, but their minds weren't corrupted, giving them the optimal chance to find victory. The temple guards were the first to lose their lives, with Ahsoka avoiding the fight to knock out the approaching clones. Anakin, 2 temple guards, Fisto, and Kolar continued. Sidious didn't break stride. His speed was unmatched, but the form he used was something Anakin was semi-used to. His spar with Yoda was a setup for this, deflecting a strike before twisting his hand forward and trying to grab Palpatine's wrist. He almost lost his own hand in the process before blocking the Sith Lord. Kit and Agan pressed forward, soloing out Palpatine, giving him only but themselves to target. Ahsoka returned from getting the clones out of the way. She leapt forward, swinging down, narrowly avoiding Palpatine, but the Jedi Masters came to assist her. Fisto defended her from a lethal strike. Anakin bashed Palpatine's lightsaber as Kolar drove his weapon into Palpatine's shoulder. He pulled back and sent electricity out of his fingers, covering the floor and electrocuting the 4 Jedi. The 2 temple guards behind them leapt over the Jedi and attacked Palpatine. Their staves aggressively jabbed at his defenses, but they weren't enough to get the kill. Palpatine kicked one of them to the side before slashing down the other, and then feeling pain rise through his back. Anakin jabbed him in the lower back, and he swung, just in time for Ahsoka to defend her master. Under her arm was her Shoto, and Anakin took the weapon she was handing him and dragged forward, catching Sidious in the abdomen. Anakin slid to the side, and Palpatine drove his lightsaber into the wall, narrowly missing Anakin, giving Fisto a clear chance to get the final kill. When the smoke settled, the galaxy was left in confusion. The Separatist Council had been obliterated, killed off by commando droids. General Grievous was killed by Mace Windu, who just used the Force to crush his torso. Now came the terribly awkward process where both sides of combat decided on a middle ground, and they tried to get rid of their differences. What became readily apparent to both governments was how they both really wanted peace, and their perception of each other had been greatly warped by the combat they allowed to take over the galaxy for the last 2.5 years. The Separatist people were not bad, and neither was their republic. The Confederacy did realize that they had a reserve fleet, and an army large enough to conquer the galaxy, but they decided on peace as a first option. Maybe they could let go of this desire for conquest. one that seemingly resonated with Palpatine and Dooku exclusively. The Jedi would have their own issues with another Sith group, but it would be stomped out by Masters Kenobi and Skywalker, as well as Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano. Savage and Maul, while being talented, were not refined in the same way that these war-tested Jedi were, and they killed the two Zabrak Sith with very little issue. In the months following, everything would be revealed about Palpatine's incident. The Jedi weren't really able to be around for the peacemaking process because of the activation of Order 66, but once the Kaminoans revealed everything, it was a very smooth process from there. Once the clones had their inhibitor chips removed, a trial began for Kamino. They may have just been fulfilling an order, but they were going to pay for almost dividing the Republic even further. The Jedi were hurt badly by Order 66, with 3,500 members dying from the activation of the Order. The war did come to an end though, thanks to a peace treaty signed by the Neutral Systems Coalition, still led by Satine, who was never wrongfully killed in her throne room. With the galaxy returning to a state of peace, it was time for real change to begin. Padme would have the twins, naturally, but she would also remain a full-time senator, leaving Anakin and her to rely on each other on their full days, and the droids when neither were available. Due to the losses acquired during Order 66, Master Skywalker, the only weapons master of the Jedi Order, would begin serving inside the High Council. It was very hard to balance his secret life and his respected Jedi life, but he managed. In the years that followed the end of the Clone War, Master Skywalker would be visited by many students, and he would teach them all, including the younglings he saved from the clones during Order 66. Due to his uniqueness of position, many aspired to be like the young Chosen One, the weapons master of the Order and member of the High Council. The Jedi continued their expansion and maintained the stability in the galaxy. It was their place, and that of the Neutral Systems, to keep the Republic and Confederacy from breaking into war again. It was a 10-year plan to reintegrate, and they were coming up on year 9. Everything was going smoothly and would continue to do so. The Skywalker twins were everything for their parents, and their lives would be greatly unaffected by the business of their parents. Luke and Leia were extremely independent in the good way, and they would become some of the brightest minds in their adult life. As for their father, Anakin inspired and he taught, a role that came very naturally to him. He enjoyed his place in the galaxy. The Council excitedly watched him become the Jedi he was always destined to become. While the betrayal of Palpatine came with his own miniature trauma, Anakin was able to get over it and be the true weapons master of the Jedi Order. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Grid36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Jango Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Damon Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granny Debane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cully Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo Weebus 670, Anakin Stank Runner, CT7567, Twister Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Knox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Nguyen, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Forward Sleazy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, Me 3 First Names, Darksing46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button, support me in other ways. Go check out the Twitch, Patreon, and PPC, streaming for Star Wars Outlaws right now.
We're gonna steal it and fly out of here.
Yeah, I like this idea. I want a spaceship too. What's this do? Oh! Oh!
Otherwise, let's talk about this story. So, the idea that Ahsoka could really jumpstart this was kind of an interesting concept in my opinion. I like the idea of the Council kind of putting their trust in him ahead of time. I like the idea that the Council believes Ahsoka is kind of a child prodigy, where they see her becoming a knight before the age of 20, becoming a knight when she's young in her age, like Mace, like Vernestra, like Anakin. And so I feel like they would have trust in her to have the right intuition about Anakin, and that's kind of what leads this entire event forward. I believe the Council does react a bit quickly, but I think their reaction is entirely based on how Anakin handles his training regiment and that test that they do with the 3 spars. But I really wanted the kind of overarching thing for Anakin to be that he really feels this level of trust with the Council, that they willingly put him into a position to succeed, and he naturally succeeded at that position because he naturally is gifted enough to be good at it. So, I hope you all enjoyed the story. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.